Everyone believed they already knew Pastor Travis Greene. For years, people saw him as a man of faith, a man of love, a man who stood strong on every stage he walked on. But you won't believe how different everything looked once the door of his private life finally opened. Let me tell you, the moment his wife spoke, it felt like the ground shifted under everyone who ever admired him. She said things that no one expected, and suddenly the perfect image people held in their minds began to crack. It was like the world saw a picture for years, but the story behind that picture was completely different. And this is where it gets interesting, because everything she revealed slowly uncovered a truth that had been hidden for so long. People had always seen him as a strong spiritual leader, someone who guided millions with his songs and sermons. His life looked like a dream. Happy family photos, smiling children, loving captions, and moments that made people believe he had everything under control. But here's the shocking part. His wife claimed that behind those happy smiles, there were problems no one talked about. She said their life at home was filled with silent pressure, unspoken arguments, and a heavy tension that kept growing over the years. She felt like she was living two different realities, the one the world praised and the one she had to face every day. According to her, the moments that hurt the most were the ones where she felt unheard. She tried to talk. She tried to express her feelings, but she said many times the conversations ended before they even started. She explained that the man who stood on stage talking about love and truth sometimes acted very differently at home. This part shocked the people closest to them because no one expected such a huge gap between his public face and private behavior. She said she kept her pain inside for years, believing things would get better, believing the love they shared would fix what was breaking. But slowly the silence became heavier and the distance between them grew wider. She also shared that there were nights when they argued for hours, but nothing ever got solved. Promises were made, but she said many of them were broken. She felt like important decisions were taken without her opinion, decisions that affected the whole family. And what makes this story different is that she didn't speak out of anger. She said she spoke because she had reached a point where her heart felt empty and she couldn't pretend anymore. She felt lost between what she saw on stage and what she lived in her home. The most painful thing she revealed was the feeling of being invisible. She said she watched him talk to crowds about honesty and love, but she couldn't find those things inside their house. For her, it was confusing, heartbreaking, and deeply painful. She started questioning everything. Was their life real, or was it just a show for the public? And the craziest part was that she felt she had no one to talk to because the world only knew the perfect image he showed year after year. The pressure kept building. She tried to keep the family together quietly, hoping things would change. But she said silence only made things worse. Every ignored conversation, every broken promise, every lonely moment pushed her closer to the edge. And then one day, destiny took an unexpected turn. She reached her breaking point. She could no longer keep the truth locked away. She decided to speak, not to destroy him, but to save herself from the pain she carried for so long. When she finally gathered the courage to speak, everything around her changed. The moment her words reached the public, it felt like a storm had been waiting for years and suddenly exploded all at once. People who had admired him for so long were shocked, confused, and unsure what to believe. But you won't believe how deeply her story went once she began sharing the details she had held inside for so long. She said that the problems didn't start suddenly. They grew slowly, quietly, in moments most people would ignore. Let me tell you, every small argument, every broken promise, every lonely night added weight to her heart until she felt she couldn't carry it anymore. She explained that many of their issues came from decisions made without her. She claimed important family matters were handled in ways she didn't even know about: financial choices, personal plans, even emotional boundaries. She said she was left out again and again. And this is how she started losing her voice in her own home. She said she often felt like a stranger watching her own life being shaped without her input. What hurt her most was that the man everyone respected for his honesty did not show that same honesty behind closed doors. She said she tried to speak, tried to ask questions, but sometimes she felt her words hit a wall. But here's the shocking part. She didn't blame fame. She didn't blame the fans. She didn't even blame the ministry. She said the real problem was the growing disconnect between who he was publicly and who he was privately. She felt that two versions of him existed, one for the world and one for the home. and the gap between those two versions grew wider with time. As his schedule got busier, as more people praised him, as more responsibilities fell on his shoulders, she felt herself disappearing from his priorities. She said the world admired him, but she lived a completely different story. There were moments when she tried to bring him closer. She cooked. She supported him. She stood by him at events, but she claimed that the effort always felt one-sided. She said she felt like she was holding the foundation of their marriage alone while he carried the world. She talked about nights when she waited for him to come home, hoping they would talk and fix things. But instead, she said those nights ended in silence, excuses, or emotional distance. This is where it gets interesting because she said she realized the marriage wasn't breaking from one big mistake. It was breaking from many small ones that kept happening again and again. She also mentioned that she watched him preach about love and forgiveness, but sometimes struggled to see those values inside their own house. She questioned whether he truly believed what he preached or if he was trapped in an image he had to protect. What makes this story different is that she didn't expose everything at once. She took years to understand her own feelings, years to gather the courage, years to decide that she couldn't live between two realities anymore. Then came the emotional weight she had been carrying for so long. She said she felt lonely even when he was physically present. She felt disconnected even when they smiled for a photo. And she said the emptiness became louder with time. The craziest part was when she shared that she sometimes looked at their family photos and felt like she was staring at strangers because the happiness in those pictures didn't match the heaviness in her heart. That's when she said she understood something important. If she stayed silent, the truth would stay buried forever and her pain would only grow. And then just when she thought she could handle it quietly, destiny took an unexpected turn. A series of personal moments she couldn't ignore anymore, made her realize that staying quiet was destroying her from the inside. So, she chose the hardest path. She decided to speak her truth, no matter how big the storm might become. When she finally went public with her story, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Social media erupted with shock, disbelief, and debate. Fans who had once admired him as a flawless spiritual leader suddenly found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. You won't believe the intensity of the reactions. Some people supported her, some defended him, and many were confused, struggling to reconcile the man they loved with the claims being made. Let me tell you, it wasn't just online chatter. News outlets began reporting the story, dissecting every word, interviewing people close to the family, and analyzing the impact of her revelations. This is where it gets interesting because the story became a national conversation, not just a private family issue. Inside the ministry, tension grew quickly. Staff and associates felt caught in the middle, unsure what to believe or who to support. Some felt disappointed, some confused, and a few even chose to distance themselves entirely. According to insiders, the pressure created a complicated environment where loyalty, trust, and personal opinions clashed constantly. But here's the shocking part. Even people who had been closest to Pastor Travis admitted they were surprised by how much they hadn't known. It seemed that the perfect public image had hidden a private struggle that touched everyone around him in ways no one expected. Her claims also forced people to reflect on his public work. Followers started looking back at sermons, interviews, and events, trying to spot signs they may have missed. Suddenly, small inconsistencies or minor details that seemed harmless before took on new meaning. What makes this story different is that her revelations weren't just about private disputes. They made people question integrity, leadership, and honesty on a much larger scale. Every public action he had taken now seemed to be under a microscope, and people debated whether his private life aligned with the values he preached. The world was watching closely, and no one could ignore the contrast between image and reality. Emotionally, the impact was enormous. She said that speaking out brought relief, but also fear. Fear of backlash, fear of judgment, fear of losing the respect of people who had trusted them for years. At the same time, she wanted to be honest and transparent because she believed the truth mattered more than appearances. This is how she described her experience, a mix of anxiety, liberation, and hope that her words could make a difference. And she hoped that by speaking she could encourage others to value honesty and accountability even when it is difficult. The public reaction, the ministry tension, and the emotional weight all combined to create a turning point. For the first time, Many saw the cost of fame, influence, and a public life. They saw that even spiritual leaders who seemed to have perfect lives face struggles, just like anyone else.